Hey there, welcome to the Anim Dojo podcast. My name is Tom Box, co-founder of Anim Dojo, and I'm in the good company of the Anim Dojo crew. We have
Badruddin. I'm co-founder of Anim Dojo and animation supervisor at Access Animation.
I'm Kate Gascoyne. I'm the community manager at Anim Dojo and the recruitment coordinator at Blue Zoo.
And I'm Grace Hebditch. I'm marketing coordinator for Anim Dojo and Blue Zoo.
Excellent. So hopefully you know what Anim Dojo is. If not, our mission is to give everyone a helping step up the career ladder in animation and VFX industries, regardless of your age, location, wealth, or time availability. And we do that on our website, which we call kind of an animation gym, where we've got loads of workouts, live stream challenges, and feedback sessions, all about getting the job you want to get. And when you do that, you can hit the ground running. And this podcast is part of that. We've got interviews, discussions with animation professionals to give actionable advice to help conquer your career in animation. And in this episode, we continue our interviews that were recorded at Move Summit back in Edinburgh, back in February, which seems a very long time ago now. And we spoke to legendary animators like James Baxter and Andrew Chesworth. So check those previous podcasts out with the conversation with them, as they had some absolutely diamond nuggets of tips of how to get that job you want to get. So on to this episode. At the Move Summit, Grace attended a masterclass with the very experienced animation director and animation series director, Ruth Ducker. And that session was sponsored and organized by Screen Skills. And in it, she gave invaluable advice on how to climb the career ladder to become an animation series director, which is what a lot of animators aspire to become. So we thought you'd like to hear what she had to say. So Grace, you went to that session. How was it?
Oh yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, from a personal point of view, it was just really cool to hear a woman talking about with such confidence and spark about being a director, and she was really inspiring, I found. So she has got over 19 years experience in the animation industry, and she's directed titles for Disney Junior, Disney Asia, CBeebies and Universal Kids. And she has worked in a multitude of roles, which she will talk about more in the interview.
Excellent. Cool. Well, shall we hear the first question then?
I'm here with Ruth Ducker, and I'm going to ask her a couple of questions. So, can you tell me a bit about all of the different roles that you've done? Because you've done such a huge variety over the years.
Okay, so I have worked over the years as a layout artist, previs artist, an animator, a background artist, a camera artist, a mocap, clean-up artist, what else? Animation director, and eventually, finally, a series director. Oh, and production manager. I have actually done a little bit of that at the very start of my career. I started as a runner, then production manager, quickly to realise this was not a skill that I wanted to pursue.
Do you have any advice for anybody who might be in a role that isn't the best role for them? What would you suggest to them for looking for something new, something different? What direction did you take when it didn't feel right?
Well, there is the dilemma of working versus not working, and while you can have a focus of what you really want to achieve, you can't. It doesn't necessarily follow that you would be able to find that career or get a job in it. So I think sometimes I've made choices to do jobs that have not been my first choice, but ultimately I've enjoyed them and I've learned something and I have gained something from them. However, there have been times, and I use the production management as an example, when I have not enjoyed what I'm doing and I've realised that while I can do it, it's not something I really want to do. In those situations, I have actually just had to learn to be bold and ask to move and ask to change. And so I think the lesson from that is, if you don't like something and you prefer something else and you want to do it, do ask. Ask if you can have an opportunity. If you get told no, that's fine. Don't take it personally. Just ask another person.
So she's done a lot of jobs. That's from a layout artist, previs, to production manager, to series director. That's quite a resume. From that, I guess the the kind of the obvious question to me that springs to mind is, how do people approach that? If, like in a job interview, for example, Katie, if they feel like that's a job to get your foot in the door, which is, a perfectly advisable thing to do, how do you approach that in an interview if it's not your kind of the dream job you want, but you're doing it to kind of get into industry? What's the best way of tackling that, so you're not trying to hide anything, but you're being honest?
Yeah, I mean, I have experience with that.
Yeah.
I come from an animation background, and I interviewed for a recruitment position in a HR role, and I think a big part of why that was a successful interview, and also why it's really helped me, like Ruth said, you can still learn something from those experiences, is I used it as more of an asset for the role rather than something to hide, and was also kind of completely honest about, interviewers ask you, what's your 5-year plan? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And just kind of being honest with them, because I think as long as you can show that you can be fully committed to this job that you're interviewing for, especially when it has a contract length, that's how long the studio are also committing to you, so you can return that in kind. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that, like, I'm committed to doing this for the next 15 years of my life. That isn't a requirement of the interview. So I think just kind of like being honest, and if you can make it into an asset. For me, it was with recruitment, I was asked, do you want to be in recruitment or do you want to be an animator? And, which path do you want to go down? And I said, well, I don't really see it as a kind of two directions. To me, one will inform the other. So I think that my knowledge in animation is really helpful for recruitment. And, I think that my knowledge of recruitment will give me a great awareness of the studio if I did decide to move to an artist role in the future. So yeah, as much as you can, try and make it an asset. It's not something to hide, it's all knowledge.
Yeah. I guess there's a balance though, isn't there, between wanting to do it or enjoying doing it and doing I guess it's very tricky doing a job that might not be your ideal job, but at the same time being professional about it and doing everything you can to get the most out of that job for your employer and for yourself.
Yeah,
definitely. I think, that's definitely true. I think another thing that helps is if you're unsure about something, or you have two different options of what you want to do, I say do both. So try to do one of them, see how you feel about it. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, that's not for me, and then trying the other thing. So a good example of that is my sister, who has always wanted to become an artist. She was more of the client side, if you were calling it. Like she was always the client side of things, and she's always worked then with studios or artists, freelancers, and she's always wanted to become the artist herself. And she took a gap to try that. And she realized very quickly that she doesn't mind doing it as a hobby, but doesn't want to do it for her career. And it informed her to want to then, but she still wants to do something creative. So she's now moving more into something where it's more live action based. And it's the same for me. I initially, and not many people know this, I initially wanted to be a modeler, not an animator, because I thought the skill of being a character designer or someone who likes to draw would naturally translate to becoming a modeler. But I found the tools to be so different from what I found to be natural that I did not really enjoy modeling at all. And I found naturally enjoying animation. And even in my own career, I've done the same thing where I've done, various roles. But the advice I would give is, if you want to do something different to what you're doing at the moment, it's easier to do it from within a corporation or company. So you could be someone who's an animator at a studio, you prove yourself there, you prove your time there, and you can say, can I actually try doing designs? Can I try doing storyboarding? That gives you a better chance than it is to do it without them knowing who you are. Like if there are two people coming to approach on a production, we need more storyboard artists. We know that, for example, I don't know, Mr. X is working for us. He's been a great animator. He can draw as well. He understands our process. He wants to try doing storyboards. Fine, we'll give this person a shot, as opposed to like Mr. Z, who's coming from off the street. We don't know who they are.
Yeah.
They've never done boarding before. So who would we take a chance on? Obviously, the person that we've worked with. So if you do want to do something, but it's not in front of you at the moment, maybe be a little patient and kind of build some seeds, or plant some seeds, and you'll be able to do that eventually.
Bader, when you said you set off to be a modeler, I thought you were going down a catwalk route. I thought your career had taken a very different turn, but I misunderstood.
Yeah, no, I my modeling days are behind me.
I think that with that, I know a few people who have kind of like done it in the sense of when you've been in the studio and wanted to move more of a sideways direction, you can actually use the resources of the studio. For example, if you want to get into storyboarding, you could get a real script and then try kind of storyboarding and get feedback from one of the storyboard artists. So you can kind of do it a mixture of using the studio's resources with trying to do a bit of stuff in your own time and getting the advice of all the kind of the experienced artists to try and push in that direction, which is something that is hard to do outside of a studio.
I think it's quite a nice lesson to learn from Ruth Ducker that your first job might not be your dream job, and that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's sometimes a little bit of a rush to get to that dream job and get there straight away, but every career is quite a winding road, which you don't know which quite way it's going to go, and that's what kind of makes it fun. So I think it's you always got to remember that just keep going and see where it ends up. You don't necessarily have to have the exact destination in mind every day.
No. And the destination changes a lot as
well. Totally, yeah.
Oh yeah, cool. Shall I play the next clip?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you have any advice about confidence in the workplace? Because you say about just ask. I feel like that takes a lot of confidence.
Absolutely, and I think I've probably forgotten how difficult it was for me to ask when I was early on in my career, and confidence has been an ongoing issue for me, and even now I have crises of confidence at the moment, even though I have a lot of experience and I've taken very senior roles. So just saying yes, ask someone it seems a little glib, but actually you do have to overcome your fear. You do have to grab confidence. It is difficult. It's not easy. Some people find it easier than others. I think it's actually it's more frequent that women will struggle with confidence than men, but that doesn't mean that men won't. But it is something that you have to grasp if you want to move into certain areas. You have to overcome your fear, and I don't have any easy solutions for that. Maybe a solution would be to just stand and look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am the greatest. I don't know. It is a difficult question, and it is a burning question, especially for creatives as well, because they quite often are less confident, and I think I actually just read recently that there's a report come out that the huge percentage of people within this industry suffer from mental health issues. So again, there are a lot of fragile people, and confidence is a difficult thing to master, but it is quite important to try and master it.
Confidence is vital, right?
Yeah, I remember when that report, the one she talks about, I remember when that came out, and yeah, it was shocking but kind of not surprising. Yeah.
That's the one about the mental illness.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about it on QVFX. If there's any LGBTQ listeners out there, just quickly shout out QVFX for a nice community for you, worth looking up.
Yeah, I think that there's this pressure to be confident that makes it sometimes tricky when you're like in a position of like leadership. And I don't know, like, I think everyone has their own tricks, you know. For me, I find actually allowing myself to be vulnerable with my team and not really try to portray that I am this super perfect, confident superhero. Like, I can just be myself. I think that kind of, first of all, allows them to feel less worried and nervous when they are discussing things, and I can actually ask questions. So I don't have to pretend to be aware of everything or know everything. I give people the chance to teach me how to do things and show me the ropes. Yeah. My skill is in helping people to achieve the best, you know, out of what they're working on, and to help them make it better and to push them. But I can't do that by creating this barrier between me and them. And sometimes I think forcing yourself to be this confident person. It doesn't help. But I know some people that just ooze confidence. But who knows? You know, I've been told many times that, oh, you come across as very confident. Well, it's not always what you see is not always what's actually going on inside.
Yeah, it's an outward projection, isn't it? Yeah. It's not necessarily super internal.
Yeah, I think there are different types of confidence as well, aren't they? Because I think if you're, for example, if you're a director, you've got to have a confident take on the direction of changes to make, but it doesn't necessarily mean you might have a confident personality or confident in other ways.
Yes.
So I think there's when people say you need to be confident, if you're, it doesn't, you might, you know, hate speaking in front of crowds, but you might have confident ideas of the way you want animation to look. And I think that's more important for the creative roles than being more the extrovert confident style of thing.
Yeah.
And I think what, sorry, go ahead.
I was just something that really stuck in my head that Izzy Burton actually said during one of her talks at a Playgrounds Festival in the Netherlands. Her kind of final word of advice wasn't don't be confident, be brave, because I think that when you're talking about confidence, especially with graduates or people who are entry level or, you know, early on in their careers, it's kind of more about bravery and faking it till you make it, and then eventually your confidence comes from your experience and how much you know about the subjects you're talking about. You know, we're unconfident when we're in areas that we don't know what to expect or we're unsure. And in those situations, it's not about acting like you know everything. It's about having the kind of bravery to try. So I think that's an interesting difference as well.
Which is, I guess, just always just nudging yourself out your comfort zone a little bit. So you're constantly being brave by just not staying within what you know. Otherwise, as an artist, you can't really develop if you don't push yourself in some different ways.
Yeah.
I was just going to say one thing, that I think it's okay to be vulnerable and not perfect. You know, we're all artists and we're very creative people. We think differently. So don't worry, like when you're amongst artists, you're not amongst, you know, people who don't really get it. We tend to forget that, I think, you know, I can just look back at when I was like in, you know, middle school, and I was maybe like one of the only artists in my class. That was very alienating for me. Whereas I think now, even when I'm in a studio, I take that for granted. Everyone there's an artist to some degree. So, you know, be yourself, just, you know, like you said, I think be brave. That's a good one. Yeah.
And no one's good at everything, right? Yeah. And so you know, imposter syndrome's kind of almost part of that. You can't be good at everything. And if you think someone's absolutely flawless and amazing at everything, you don't know them.
We spent enough time with them.
Imposter syndrome gets even worse the higher up you get. It's like you're like, why am I even allowed to make these choices and these decisions? But the years build up, and you tend to forget the achievements that you've made. And I think you know, be grateful for the journey that you're on, because you know, I know that everyone wants to reach the end, but the end won't matter much if you haven't built up what that end actually meant, you know, all the years that it took to build it.
I've got to say, I think one piece of advice that was really helpful to me, that somebody from Blue Zoo actually gave me whenever I have a crisis of confidence. It was Chloe Deneuve from Blue Zoo told me to keep a little career diary. And I've kind of done that in the form of an email folder of any email that sort of made me smile. It was a lovely piece of praise or feedback that was made me feel really good about myself. I'd just drop it in that folder, and it's so easy to just click at that, have a little look at it. And that's something that you can do to just get that quick hit of reminding yourself you are good at your job. You're there for a reason.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
You said in the talk about how you came to animation direction sort of by accident, but you worked very hard to get to where you were. And I really want I really want to ask you some advice about if you are interested in directing in the future. What would you advise a person to consider, especially if they're early in their career or starting in their career?
Okay, the first thing to consider if you're starting in your career is that direction is probably not what you expect it to be. And that's a big thing. I think a lot of people have a notion of what it is to be a director. So one of the questions in the session, someone was saying, oh yes, I imagine a director to be someone with a beret who sits on a chair with their name and has a megaphone. Well, that's not really the case. And you get, and how you are being a director is very different again from film to TV, to kids television, to like online work as well. So it really, it's such a broad thing to have a notion of. You have to remember that you have to then think about what kind of director do I want to be. So that's one element. Another important thing when you're early on in your career is to recognise that being a director actually is not necessarily an easy role, and it's not necessarily for everyone. And I think once you dispel the fantasy of what it is to be a director, then it becomes easier to think of it something that you want to pursue. If you do want to be a director, then I would say watch other directors, try and have interaction with directors, listen. There are podcasts, there are YouTube films. Watch directors talking about their process, about what it is to them. Go to talks, go to classes, go to master classes. Try and definitely learn about other people's experiences of being a director. Watch films, watch television. So it's not only about listening to how people are a director, but it's also about watching the work that they do. So understand different people's direction approach, because directing is not only about telling stories and what you see on the screen, it's also about managing the team of people that you have that help to make that. So the advice that I would give is to do that. You might be very focused, you might be an animator and that is your thing that you love to do, and you can be singular and pursue that career and then become a director, or that you can take the path that I took, which was doing a little bit of everything until you realise that, well, until you come to the position of being a director, and then suddenly all these skills feed into that job, that role. It's a personal journey, and you have to work that out for yourself. But when I said it's a journey, it is a journey. It's not something that you can walk into straight out of college. I'd say the best directors are the ones who go on a journey, and because it is an evolution and it is a process and it is a process of learning. A good thing to do actually, because there are lots of directors, actually quite a few at Blue Zoo who are good. You can ask them where, if you work with a director, you can ask them where they started and what their journey was, and that will help again with your understanding of what it is to be a director. But it's not necessarily easy, and it's not necessarily what you think it is.
Some insightful information there, because I think that the starting point from that is make sure direction is what you understand it to be. So if you're spending kind of like loads of years or however long it takes to become a director, make sure you that is actually what you want to do, because it might not be. You might think, oh, I want to be a director because I want to do what I want to do and not take instruction from other people, but that's not what directing is. I mean, Beda, you've got experience of that, right?
100% agree with everything that she said. I mean, if you're in it just for the prestige of what that means, trust me, it's not for you, because being a director, or, I mean, like, different companies have different names, and that even means different things on different productions. So, for example, where I am at the moment, it's not really called director, but it's a similar role. I'm still sort of having to lead the team in terms of animation, and making sure that they give a really solid performance, but I'm not making the call on what the performance is. I'm being given a brief about what the performance is, and I should try and match it, or I should try to if I wanted to change it, there are discussions you can have, and you can try and propose ideas. But then when I was at Blue Zoo, I had more sort of creative control over how we can push certain things. And then when I was at Brown Bag, it was also different. It changes from company to company, from project to project, from client to client. But if you think you're just going to be sitting on a chair, like she said, with a beret and kind of like just ordering people around, and, that's not what it is. You will be doing, I'm not trying to put people off of it, but it's a lot more about your people skills, your ability to manage crises and situations, how to feedback on notes correctly. You need to be able to at least realize why something is not working and give some suggestions. You can't just say that the shot feels floaty. You have to say why it feels floaty and how you can fix it. And you need to be constructive, because you can't also put your team down. So it's a people skill thing, it's a management thing, it's creative, and the more experience you have, even outside of animation, you bring that in, that really helps. So I think that knowing what it's all about really is an important thing. A lot of animators prefer to stay in animation. I know people that don't want to go beyond lead. They're saying, no, I'd rather stay lead. Doesn't seem like it's for me, because they can see what it is. They see exactly what it does. Some people can't wait to break out of lead and say, oh, I can't wait to just become, for me, I love this. I would love to keep even exploring it further and further and going more into other territories of the industry. So yeah, research it well, research what that means in different parts of the industry, and see if that feels like it's the right thing for you.
So on that note, what type of person do you think makes a good director, or what type of person do you think might want to be a director, then actually realize they're actually best like doing more of the one of the other roles, kind of whether it's being more of a lead or what advice can you give in terms of helping people to understand what the difference is?
Well, I think if I can kind of give it as an example outside of animation, let's say you like the title of doctor or surgeon. You like how that sounds. You would love to be able to go into a party and say, oh yes, doctor, blah, blah. Well, that's going to be 10% of your time. 90% of your time, you're probably going to be in a very stressful situation with people's lives literally in your hands, having to make very tough decisions, having to get into probably some, gruesome situations that most of the public would not want to even have to think about. That's what a surgeon would be doing. It's the same for a director. If all you want is the credit and the title and how to put that into your CV, that probably is not what it is for you. But if you enjoy dealing with pressure in terms of, having to think on your feet, thinking outside the box, you don't mind not having to be doing the one creating the artwork. Like some people have a difficulty letting go of that. If you're okay to let go of that and have people do the fun part, so to speak, and for you to almost have pleasure by seeing them perform well, if that gives you pleasure, seeing others do well based on notes you have given, if you enjoy speaking with clients or, some people who are outside of the studio that that are not necessarily in your safety zone, because usually within a studio, you're in a safety zone. You can say whatever you want, but if you like that feeling of speaking to outside people and engaging them, it seems like this seems like it would be the right thing for you. And if you want to get into it and that's not really who you are, it doesn't mean that you can't do that. It just means that you need to adapt. There are people who I've recommended to become animation directors who did not necessarily fit that when you first think about who they are, but they did bring to the table other aspects. They were just really good with people or really good with giving feedback. Maybe not so much with the client side, but that's fine. Someone else can do that. Client side. And they would enjoy sitting there and brainstorming and coming up with that. See, this is where you can start to see yourself branching off into different parts of it. And this is where the team balance starts to make sense. And it's different on every project.
Well, it's like what Ruth said, where no directing role is the same. It completely changes in every production, every studio.
Yeah.
Every. So it's that exact thing is like, figure out what your strengths are. Ultimately, you still need to find a strategy and a way to communicate. But whatever that communication is, as long as there's a strength to it, then that's what you need, and you can build off of that. And there's a niche to fill.
Well,
Yeah.
and Ruth's talking about even being a series director, which is even like another step removed from what I do, which is what,
Yeah.
I'm very good friends with Matt T from Blue Zoo, and we kind of like climbed up together at Blue Zoo. And last I left, he was a series director, and
Still
I
is.
never would have imagined to see Matt become a series director because of what I remembered he enjoyed. But it turned out over time, he enjoyed sitting and reading scripts. I couldn't stand to sit and read scripts all day. Like, I really couldn't. I preferred the storyboarding side of things, but looking at the scripts and all that, like, it was difficult for me. But
And I guess that's...
Yeah, but Matt embraced that. And over time, it sort of felt natural, and he just kind of went in that direction. And, which kind of brings me to a point of saying it's okay to not like certain things, but still perform well in your role. We were a team. So where I was not able to feed back as much on scripts, I was able to double that when it came to the storyboarding and the composition of the shots. And it was like, it felt right for us.
Yeah. And I think also that, like, for example, with like Matt, if you're like animating as a junior, senior, lead for over 10 years, you're going to want a bit of a change and step up into other roles, most likely. So I think you've got to remember everyone changes where they want to go over a career. It's very unlikely that what you wanted to do 10 years ago is the exact same role you want to do now. So I think it's, just go with it. And Katie, what was your experience? Because obviously you directed a short film. What was your experience of directing for the first time in terms of compared to the normal roles of not leading a team that you would have to as director?
I mean, what Ruth said about being under pressure, there's definitely a kind of pressure, especially with what you were saying, Beda, not only to kind of critique people and give feedback, but also to kind of make sure that everyone is kind of on board with and understands the kind of the vision and the direction that it's going, because that's what you do as the director, is you're communicating the direction and trying to keep it on track across everybody.
Yeah. But
it's also, knowing when to really listen to people who can feed back on that and help you with that, So for me, I was a first-time director, and quite luckily, really. So I was really open to all of that feedback, but then also had to kind of say it won't work this time because there's not the time for it and things like that. So it's definitely a really big kind of communication thing. And you felt the pressure when you were making those decisions. There's no one above you to tell you that's the wrong decision. So for better or for worse, you have to kind of understand that you're the one making those decisions, and you've just got to go with your gut, really.
And sometimes those decisions aren't nice when you have to unuse someone's work when they've taken a long time to make it and something just didn't work out, and you have to tell someone, sorry, that thing you spent a week making, I've decided not to use it, which can be horrible.
Or, the shot, it's working really nicely, but it doesn't work with the shot surrounding it, and it's not along the right thread. So you're going to have to make some changes to it. And it's like, well, I've already done it. And it's like, I know, but it's just, that's the decision. But the pressure element, but I say all of that. It was stressful. It was time consuming. I loved it. It was really fun. So, it's not, we're making it sound really quite dark, but, there is that. It is really satisfying working and being such a big part of the process across the board, I think, is the most exciting element. But
I guess that's why directors take a long time to get up to that, so you can get acclimatized to the pressures of leading a team and making those decisions. And because, a director is about leadership and being able to make those calls under pressure. And that's not something that you instantly have straight out of university. And it takes a long time to know the best ways to communicate and direct a whole team.
Yes, definitely.
Cool. Should we listen to the final question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give somebody less director focused who is early on in their career and wants to get into animation, or perhaps be a layout artist? Who wants to be an artist is what I'm asking.
I would say if you can, if you're, well, apply for jobs, apply for entry-level jobs. There are a lot of entry-level jobs. There are also a lot of, I don't know if internships, there's some companies will do internships, so again you can get some work experience. I would also say if you can't find a job or a role, go for a runner's role, because again, you will get a foot in the door. You will meet people. You will be able to talk to people, and you will learn about being creative. You will learn about different roles within film, within television, and most importantly, you will, as I said, you will meet people and who may then be able to help you and support you. So, just any job, just foot in the door job, is just as valuable as an early entrant animator, really. So take that first job to get your foot in the door, then work hard, do a good job, and then you will find that doors will start to open. But an important point: work hard, do a good job, don't have an attitude. That's quite key, because if you're in an environment and you're a bit bullshit or a bit know-it-all with your seniors, then they're not going to rep for the next role. So recognise that you are at the beginning of your career and that you have a huge amount to learn, but then look around you and see what you can learn, because people will teach you if you're open to that.
Thank you very much.
That's okay.
Some evergreen classic advice there of work hard, do a good job, and don't have an attitude. I don't think you can go far wrong with that. What do you think?
Yeah, it's perfect.
So
yeah, I think it's very in line with what we were saying last time as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's quite straightforward advice, but it's so important to get in there. And I think equally the sense of just trying to get into a studio, get your foot in the door, and just meet people. And you can meet people in studios or outside of studios, and it's something we often say is the kind of like the networking is almost as important as your skills, because people aren't going to find you. You've got to go out there and find other people and increase your chances of getting that connection that gets you a job or makes you aware of a job that's opening. It's life's a series of chances, and you've got to try and make more chances as you can get.
I think one thing to say, if you're in a situation like we are at the moment, I don't know what's going to happen in 6 months if you're listening to this, but currently we are still in lockdown, and I think most of the world is. So if you, obviously some of these points are kind of impossible to do right now. You can't really go out and network in the same way. But I did notice a lot of people started adding me on LinkedIn. I think that's a really good step. And what the reason for that is not so that, it's not like myself will be able to give you a job, but I do know that a lot of people tend to just go on their own LinkedIn and say, or they'll forward something that they liked, or there'll be like some internal thing and they'll like forward it on their own LinkedIn. You'll be able to hear more. You'll see at least things that they like. You'll just feel a bit more involved, I think. It's not necessarily that it can help you actually get a job directly, but it's at least one step closer. So don't just add recruiters on LinkedIn. Try to go for some artists, senior artists as well. Let them be familiar with your name, at least to some degree. And use this time to sharpen your skills. If you're stuck at home, don't just sit there on Netflix. Sharpen your skills. Do something that when you walk out of this, at least you can use to add to your portfolio.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know. I had a lot of I relate very hard to that because when I was a graduate, even though it wasn't lockdown, I didn't have any money to go to Annecy or travel to Manchester Animation Festival or go to all these places or even go to London really for meetups. That was kind of still like way outside of my zone of like accessibility. And what really helped me was Anim Dojo was the biggest element of I want someone at Blue Zoo to know who I was. Like that was the core goal. I thought that was way worth spending £15 a month doing.
But it worked.
and it worked, It was like as much as it was about animating, it was also about, in the kind of like friendliest, non-stalkery way. It was about making sure that I at least like said one comment every stream, and that I was present on the stream so that my name was around there. And that if there was a challenge, I took part, or if someone posted a critique, I would at least kind of comment on one or two with a bit of information, or at least like it or something. And it's just that kind of thing that you were mentioning, Bader, about people having an awareness of your name, and just who you are. And then eventually, we'd never met before, but I did all of the streams. And then when I met you for the first time in London, after telling work that I was off sick, and on my part-time retail job, I just randomly hopped on a train and went to London and stayed at my friend's on a sofa. And when I met you for the first time, you were super familiar with me and friendly, because even though we'd never met in person and you probably didn't even know my face, just the association of like seeing my name all the time, it was so easy to chat. Just making sure that you stay on it, you know, keep trying.
Yeah, I think there's actually in I think psychology or something, when there's a thing that if you see someone's name kind of 7 times in different places, you'll feel like you have a more kind of personal connection to them, and your brain will just get that bond. Obviously, that needs to be in a good sense. If you see it up on the name on the wanted poster or something, it's probably not going to be quite the same. But but it's the same thing. Just trying to spread your name, so next time they see it, they go, I think I know that person. Let me take a second look, kind of thing. And that's how a lot of people get jobs.
100%.
I feel like I know that with applicants. Sorry, Grace.
Sorry, Katie. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just saying, like, I feel like I know that with applicants. Obviously, like, as a recruiter, I'm always looking through applications, and it's not necessarily like there's loads of passport photos to go alongside those names. But I see those names like time and time again through like LinkedIn, or maybe I'll see that they've like posted a short film, or, you know, their Vimeo or their ArtStation comes up or something whilst I'm looking. And it feels like I know them, even though I've never spoken to them, just because I've seen their name so many times. And
you know they're keen because they've been around trying to make themselves known.
Yeah, totally.
And from a social media point of view, I see the same people saying lovely things and being lovely on the Anim Dojo socials. I just want to shout you guys out, because it's a joy running those socials, because they're very positive. I so rarely see anything that's like not unkind, or it's always like bolstering other people, giving nice feedback. So yeah, shout out to you guys.
Cool. No, thanks all. I mean, Anim Dojo is all about that community and helping each other. So, and that's what we love to see. So it's great that, you know, people are doing that, because Anim Dojo wouldn't be Anim Dojo without people like that who are helping each other, like Katie did when you did Anim Dojo a couple of years ago and got a job for it. So I think that's a nice point to wrap it up. Just say thanks to Ruth for speaking to Grace, and thanks to Grace, Katie and Bader for taking the time to record this podcast. And of course, go to animdojo.com if you want to check it out and get on board and join the good community, and hopefully we can help you get that job that you're after. And equally, if you want to listen to more podcasts, then do, if you stumbled across this one somehow, then do subscribe to all the others on all the normal podcasty places. Cool. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And cheers for listening. And till the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.